Hey, this is AJ with Blackhawk Bushcraft, and today I wanted to share some thoughts related to fire and fire kits. My hope is that this brief video may provide a resource for any who are starting out with bushcraft and or survival, or just to give you some things to think about and provide you with a good starting point related to an essential kit that really should be part of any bushcraft or survival setup. For bushcraft and survival, fire is one of those essential infinity stones that really can turn the tide between feeling miserable or comfortable. Fire provides the means of cooking, sanitizing, purifying, providing warmth, light, protection, comfort. It assists in making tools. The list goes on and on. To sum up, fire and the means of producing fire is a must-have for many reasons, and having and carrying a well-thought-out, prepared fire and tinder kit very quickly becomes a best friend and valuable resource. So I want to talk about my fire kit, what it includes, and why I've chosen to include the items contained therein. I also wanted to mention that my kit is built based around what works for me and is not meant to be an example of an all-inclusive fire kit. I may carry items that others haven't thought of or items they would choose not to carry. A fire kit is preference-driven and, in my opinion, should always cover the following. Fire kit should provide the means of producing more than just one way to start a fire. Fire kit should also provide everything required to successfully start fire with the least amount of effort possible. And a fire kit should always serve as a reminder of the importance of fire and keep you thinking about what else you might add, how to get by if you had less, and what other skills you might need to acquire and refine. In a very real sense, your fire kit becomes a teacher as much as a tool. When you're cold and tired, uncomfortable, find yourself in less than ideal circumstances, error rates have a tendency to climb, even with completing what may otherwise be very simple tasks under more ideal, comfortable situations. As such, my fire kit covers very easy to more advanced methods of producing fire, and most important, things with which I have experience. Let me reemphasize, your kit should provide you with the resources with which you have experience and sufficient know-how. So let's break open my fire kit and discuss the contents. So what I have here is my fire kit. It's a simple drawstring leather bag with antler toggle. Now, I do want to point out, you don't need something like this. This is something that, I enjoy carrying my fire kit in, but isn't something that is necessary. I mean, for purposes, you could use just a simple drawstring bag. This is a drawstring bag. My wife made me a few of these, and I carry my gear in these too. You could use a Ziploc gallon bag if you wanted to for your fire kit. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just something to contain the elements that are essential for your fire kit. So in my fire kit, I want to start out with what I have in here and why I chose to put this in my fire kit. First of all, I have a Bic lighter. Okay, easy to use, instant flame. It's not fail-proof, but highly reliable and a means of producing flame without a high degree of difficulty and effort. Now, I get some people will frown on Bic lighters and carrying a Bic lighter or a Zippo because of reasons like, well, your fuel will run out, or it's not traditional enough, or it's not bushcrafty enough, or it's not this enough, it's not that enough, blah, 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 blah. Again, you're welcome to carry what you want or don't want. For me, if I can simplify lighting a fire using a lighter, okay, and don't need to rely on flint and steel or friction fire or magnifying my urine through a Ziploc bag to use as an improvised Fresnel lens or whatever, that's what I choose to do. You don't always have to whip out a Ferro Rod or flint and steel or craft a friction fire set to produce fire. I know without a doubt that if our ancestors had something like a Bic lighter or a Zippo, they would have used it too. It makes no sense to me to simply choose to avoid adding a lighter to a fire kit. Yes, it will not last forever, okay, and it will eventually have to be replaced as the fuel expends. But so will char cloth and tinder fungus or many other components within a fire kit. They will not last forever and eventually will have to be replaced and replenished. And if I end up expending my lighter before replacing it, then in my kit, I'm still covered with other means of fairly easily producing fire, albeit not as easy as a lighter. Does that make sense? And it goes back to my second point of planning for a kit that allows you components to produce fire with a much higher success rate and the least amount of effort possible. Okay? Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with flint and steel, friction fire, and methods considered more traditional and bushcrafty. And by all means, plan for them and make sure you have the practice, experience, and knowledge to back up every gear component you choose to carry. But if push comes to shove, and if it came down to either crafting a bow drill set or simply using my lighter at my disposal if I needed fire right away, I would choose the lighter. I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer because the fail rate of producing flame with a lighter is much, much lower than friction fire, where the success rate is reliant on so many other variables than simply just flicking your thumb and producing fire like you can with a lighter. Okay? So that's why I have this in here. Okay, the next item. I have jute twine. Okay, and the reason why I carry jute twine is because it's a great tinder material for catching a spark, adding to a bird's nest to ignite an ember from flint and steel, or to catch sparks from a ferro rod. It's just an all-around highly effective tinder, cheap to purchase, easy to prepare. So I have the cord version as well as the kind that I have pulled apart and prepared this way as well. Okay. In addition, it's a length of cord that we can use for other purposes. So I like to plan my kits around multi-use versus just single use, okay? And with the prepared twine, already having some prepared is great, but also having roughly, this is, I believe, about 12 to 15 feet of jute twine that weighs next to nothing and takes up very little space. So those I have in my fire kit as well. Okay, the next item is a pill bottle and roughly 20 feet of duct tape wrapped around it. Again, multi-use item that can be used as tinder or tape if needed, if I need some tape. From a length of duct tape, you can actually pull and extract the fibers, which you can see in there. This is loaded with fibers going both directions, okay? Or you can just simply slice a length of duct tape into thin lengths with your knife. It catches a spark from a ferro rod very well and has a longer burn rate than something like jute. This stuff will go up in flame and burn very quickly. This will not. And so in a very real sense and literal sense, this is a tinder with a built-in coal extender. I had around a 12-inch length I prepared as tinder at one time, and I timed the burn rate to see how long it would burn, and I almost got a full 6.5 minutes of burn time off of 1 foot of prepared duct tape tinder. Now, inside the bottle, I have prepared tinder fungus, okay? Also known as chaga. Now, I don't know, this is not actually chaga that typically you would harvest on birch. This is other tinder fungus that I found when I was out and about and came across it, and I was like, well, that would be a really great thing to put in my fire kit. Now, I want to talk a little bit about tinder fungus. Okay, tinder fungus can be fickle, and it isn't the easiest to use when compared to something like char cloth. You really have to break this stuff down well and increase the surface area to catch a to catch a spark. I'm sorry, you'd want to catch a spark, not the other from flint and steel. I honestly find it a pain in the rear. Speaking of all things back end, I guess right now, it's a pain to use with flint and steel. It's not one of my preferred methods, but where tinder fungus excels is that when it catches a spark, it holds the spark and has a very slow and steady burn rate, much slower than, say, char cloth. This also will burn very hot. So that's one of my elements in my tinder kit, or fire kit, fire and tinder kit, okay? Speaking of char cloth, that's what I have here. I have my Altoids can or tin, which I've used many times for preparing char cloth. It serves as both the tool to prepare the char cloth as well as to store it. And inside, I have char cloth and char cord made out of 100% cotton material. Now, you use char cord the same way you would char cloth, okay? The only difference is char cord actually provides a much hotter ember because of the compressed nature of the cord, and holds an extended burn time, which can be extremely useful. So having both in my char material, I just like having both. If, you know, both of them are great, but if one, compared to the burn time on, you know, a piece of char cloth versus char cord, the char cord burns hotter, and you have an extended ember for a longer period of time than you would with just char cloth. Okay, but both of them are effective and great to have. So I've got my Altoids tin with my char cloth and char cord, and then that brings me to this. In my fire kit, I also have a length of 100% cotton cordage, which I can use to replenish my char material as needed using my Altoids tin. Okay, I like to keep this length in my fire kit for that purpose, as well as it's multi-purpose. I could use this for other means or other reasons if I had to, because it's a length of cord. So I keep that in there. And it is 100% cotton with no synthetics, which is a must for char cloth and char cord. Okay. I also have in here cottonwood bark. Okay. Whenever I'm out and about, I always am looking for edibles or other useful items for practicing skills or using in my gear, whatever it may be. When we went out on a river walk as a family a while back, and while on our outing, there was a lot of downed cottonwood in an area, so I collected a bunch of the bark and brought it home. It's a great material, much like juniper or cedar bark, for making a tinder nest. I have enough here for probably, I'd say, a couple fires easily, maybe 3. If using along with jute material for a nest. And the thing about this too is easily replenishable. If I use it up, I can replenish it with other materials. Aspenwood bark works great. Again, cottonwood, juniper, cedar bark. It's lightweight. And again, I've used more of the jute twine to hold it together. So that goes in my fire kit as well. Okay. Here I have a steel striker, which also has a bow drill divot. I have a really hard time in these videos saying bow drill divot. This is just a very cheap carbon steel bow drill divot I came across for a few bucks, which works so nicely with zero friction when bearing down and applying pressure on a bow drill spindle. You can obviously make a bearing block using natural materials and then apply something like tree resin or plant material or whatever to reduce the friction and burn in the bearing block. You know, if you found a piece of maple or some type of a hardwood that would work well for a bearing block, you can minimize the friction, a piece of fat wood, you know, whatever. But this is great because it's already put together, zero friction, it's not going to burn, and it can also be used to strike flint rock, quartzite, things harder than the steel that would produce a spark. So that's why I have that in here. It's just ready to go. I don't need to worry about crafting anything. I don't need to worry about it. And the success rate of making a friction fire using a bow drill it's just a lot easier. So that's what I have in here. Striker and a bow drill divot. Now there's some knife designs that will actually include bow drill divots in their micarta handle scales, which also would work great too. However, I'm not a fan of using knife scale divots. Depending on the knife design, weight, balance point, etc., it generally is more difficult than using something like a small palm-sized, very light, tough, bow drill socket to put weight or to put pressure down when you're doing your bow drill. So that goes in there. And again, it doubles, it's multi-use, it doubles as a steel striker. And that brings me to this. In my fire kit, I have this really worthless plastic bag, but it actually works pretty good because with flint rock and quartzite, when you harvest a shard, it can actually be pretty sharp. So just keeping it in there keeps it from, you know, cutting into my leather. But I have a piece of flint rock. This is actually quartzite, another piece of flint rock. Okay. And, you know, this is a whole separate video in itself. A lot of people have the misconception that you have to use flint for flint and steel. You actually do not. There's many types of rocks within the flint family that are hard enough and will easily strike a spark when using a piece of carbon steel. And I did want to mention this is carbon steel, not stainless steel. Stainless steel will not work. It needs to be high carbon steel. So those are my rocks for doing flint and steel. And that goes in my kit. Okay. I also have this. This is a chap ice container. Chap ice. No longer filled with chap ice, but filled with bag balm. Okay. Now why on earth would I keep this in my fire kit? Well, bag balm or chapstick or petroleum jelly is a great coal extender, increases the burn time of tinders such as cotton. Okay. So a lot of folks will actually prepare cotton balls impregnated with Vaseline to increase the burn time when using the cotton as tinder. I prefer just to carry a little tube of bag balm and replenish it as needed. If I need a coal extender, then I have it. If not, then I can just use the cotton. This is also great medicinally for cuts, bruises, chapped lips, you know, all those different things. And the cotton itself also highly effective tinder, but also great for first aid purposes if you need something such as a field dressing or, you know, to wipe cuts and bruises, whatever. So that's in my kit as well. Okay, and then I also have a small hank of paracord, probably something like, I don't know, 12, 15 feet. And I keep the paracord in my fire and tinder kit also because that's what I would use as a bow drill string, as well as it can be used for other things given its a pretty decent length of cordage. One of the things that you're probably thinking is ferro rod. Everybody has to have a ferro rod. Everybody loves ferro rods. Yes, but I don't keep that in my kit per se. I actually, depending on the knives that I carry, this is one of my smaller knives. This is my LT Wright Genesis. This is like my go-to smallish bushcraft knife. I love the Genesis, but there's so many great knives out there. But yeah, ferro rod. Keep that with my knife. I don't keep it in my kit. Maybe I should. You know, I probably could easily throw one in, but I always just have one with my knife, and I always have my kit and my knife together. So I don't ever find myself thinking that I'm ever going to be with one or out the other. And so some of my fire kit elements do extend to other tools that I use and carry. So yes, that would be in my fire kit as well. A nice ferro rod. It's a 1/2-inch ferro rod. You don't need to go that big. It's just, you know, made sense to use it with the nice sized fire steel loop that they provided on the sheath. And so that's why I went with a 1/2-inch, and I made that myself. No, I didn't make the rod. I mean, I purchased the blanks and then made the rod myself. And then I actually enjoy using a dedicated striker. This does have a 90-degree spine as well as many of the other knives I use, and you can certainly use a 90-degree spine to throw sparks off of a ferro rod. So anyways, that's pretty much it as it relates to my fire and tinder kit. Again, this kit is not all-inclusive. It doesn't have everything that you possibly could want to put in a fire kit, okay? While watching this, you may have been thinking of other items that would be great components to add to a small and effective fire kit. Perhaps other items like a small candle, waterproof matches maybe, a small Fresnel lens, maybe a fire piston, perhaps other tinder choices that may work for you. And I think that's the key. Build your kit around what works for you. That's the most essential thing. Anyways, that's what I have for you today. Please like and subscribe, and please feel free to share your thoughts and comments. What does your fire kit look like? What works well for you? What do you choose to carry? Until next time, this is AJ with Blackhawk Bushcraft. Thank you very much for watching.